Good evening, everyone. How you all doing? Welcome to the 22nd episode of Employee Engagement Live. I'm Shrikant Acharya, CEO at OffiNeeds.com. OffiNeeds is a leading corporate gifting and merchandise company based in Bangalore, Hyderabad, and Chennai. And today I have a very interesting guest. Before I welcome him onto the show, let me talk to you a little bit about why we do Employee Engagement Live. Employee engagement has been a very hot topic and very important topic, especially in the last 5 to 8 years or so. But in the last 2 years, from the time the pandemic has started, now we are almost at the end of the pandemic, as we call it. Work from home has become the new normal. So the ease with which employee engagement was already a challenging topic, but now that employees are all spread out, they're working from home, it's become that much more challenging, that much more difficult, and there are so many new obstacles that have come in that were totally unforeseen. So because of the kind of business that I run, I had the opportunity to work with seasoned HR, corporate communication, and leadership professionals, and I decided to start Employee Engagement Live as an initiative to have a chat with these professionals and ask them how they're improving working on employee engagement in their organizations, and ask them about their ideas, philosophies, and anecdotes about employee engagement. Today we are on the 22nd episode, and today I have a very interesting person. Today's guest is Kaushik Gopalan. Kaushik Gopalan is a seasoned HR leader with close to 17 to 18 years of HR experience, with vast experience in India as well as globally. Kaushik currently works as the Senior Director of HR for Neustar, a TransUnion company, where he leads HR for India, EMEA, Costa Rica, and also leads strategic initiatives globally. Prior to Neustar, Kaushik was the head of HR for Asia Pacific for Aspect Software, and has held leadership positions in IBM, Symphony Teleca, and Mphasis. Uh, he's got plenty of awards. He's got the HR Leadership Award from AP HR Congress and 40 Most Talented HR Leaders by ET Now, and he's a regular columnist in some of the leading magazines and journals. So, without any further ado, help me welcome Kaushik Gopalan. Kaushik, how are you doing today?
Hi, Shrikant. It's great to be here. Thank you for that wonderful introduction, and thank you for having me on the show. It's a topic that's I am very close to my heart, and I hope we can have fun the next 45 minutes or so.
Absolutely. I have no doubt about that. So let's start with the first question I ask every guest on my show, on my show, Kaushik, and that's, what, according to you, is employee engagement?
I think you probably will get a different answer from every single person that you talk to on the show with regards towards engagement. But one of the definitions of engagement I really relate to personally is something which Daniel Pink, the author, had defined engagement in three pillars in organizations and in life generally. One, a pillar of autonomy, a pillar of mastery, and a pillar of purpose. So autonomy is basically understood as I have the freedom to do what I want to do. Mastery is understood as I'm getting better at what I do, and purpose is why do I do what I do. And I think if
Mm.
you understand engagement in the context of these three pillars, then I think you are probably on your way to kind of create a structure for engagement for employees and also your own personal self in context. So that's a definition I strongly relate to, and it's something which I think has been tried and tested in by Daniel Pink.
Awesome. Love that answer. Mastery, autonomy, and purpose. Like you rightly said, I ask this, I start every show with this question, and every time the answer is very different. Love this answer. So, first, I want to thank all the audience who are here. It's a Friday evening. You're probably winding up your day, and the end of the year is around the corner. I really appreciate you taking your time off and being here. I'm going to do my best to dig out some amazing answers from Kaushik. I've been watching a lot of his other interviews and a lot of his posts, and I'm absolutely sure that there's a lot of gold that is going to come out of this chat. And I strongly encourage everyone in the audience to be ready with pen and paper. And in a few more minutes, I'm going to invite you to pose your questions straight to Kaushik, and let's see how it goes. So Kaushik, you spoke about autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Now, purpose is something that I think is playing a much different role than it used to. No, what I mean is earlier when you would hire somebody, I don't think people would talk about purpose so much, but now we're looking at everybody talking about purpose. Can you elaborate that a little bit more? And what is the role of purpose? How does it help align the organization with the employees in the organization?
Sure. I think I think the purpose conversation is an interesting one. If you look at how that has evolved over a period of years in organizations, I think the purpose conversation has always been there,
Mm,
regardless of which industry you're in, which era that you've actually grown up. But I think it's just come to the fore now.
mm,
People want to have an understanding of what organizations, where they work, how they work, and what is the end result of those organizations. And I have if you ask my team members, they'll tell you that I'm a good storyteller. So I will illustrate some of these things with a story. And in one of my organizations, we used to do work for a large retail brand, and
okay.
their retail brand, the what we used to do in a very simple scenario was we used to build the point of sale systems. And one of the memorable experiences was the CEO of that particular retail chain actually came to India and visited us, and then took the whole team, about 50 of them, to one of the large retail outlets, and he actually showed them saying, hey, this is where you make a difference. This is what you guys do. You guys make sure that we are able to stock the products in the appropriate aisles, in the correct point of sale areas, so that you help us be successful, and in turn we help you to be successful. And I think
Awesome.
that context, and the end-to-end context for people is what people look for. For example, if you look at Simon Sinek, a very famous author, he talks about the golden circle when he talks about
Mm,
the Apple organization, and he says start with the why. And I think that the why conversation has really become important for especially this millennial generation. A lot of them want to understand the why, right? For example, my daughter, for example, is 8 years old, and she constantly asks me the why of things. And earlier, you could get away by saying, it's just how it is, but you can't do that with this generation. You need to explain to them why, and they internalize it, and then they externalize it in their own shape and form. So I'm happy. I'm excited because I think providing people meaningful opportunities to work, providing them opportunities to really make a difference, is where I think this current generation is going to make a real impact on this world, because they want to work for organizations that have an impact on society, the environment, and really are looking to shape the future in that sense. So, the why behind things is something which I
mm.
am very passionate about.
Awesome. Fantastic. So let's talk a little bit about why or how you happen to be in HR. I think that's an interesting story you have there.
Yeah, so I didn't land up in the HR professional. I mean, I didn't start off by knowing that I'm going to be in HR
Mm,
for a long time. So I was born in a family of bankers, have moved around India and the world. I was born in Chennai, then was in Bhopal for some time, then in Chennai, then in Bombay, in London, then in Chennai. Finished my schooling and my graduation, and then moved to Bangalore. And in Bangalore, then I was in Pune for some time, traveled to Hyderabad, Chandigarh, then was in the US for 3 years. So I've moved around a bit, and my journey into HR wasn't, I was I studied in Padma Seshadri in Chennai, and then did well in my 10th. But I was very clear that I wanted to explore into the accounting world. And in those days, if you get good marks in science, you getting into accounting world is considered to be a little bit of a blasphemy. So I chose commerce, much against the wishes of my science teachers. And then when you do commerce and you go into BCom, you go through that driven path of getting into chartered accountant and start
mhm,
studying there. And I did my CA foundation, and but then I started to understand that this is probably not my world. The numbers world. Though I enjoy numbers, but I'm a far more of a people person. I'm a far more of a I would rather be good in the management side, because I understood that I like the the aspects of management. So I got some good counsel from people around me. Decided to
Mm,
do my MBA, but that portion I was very clear before I did my MBA. I knew that I wanted to be in human resources, and
mm,
um, it and I just chanced about it. I didn't even know there was something called HR. I had a couple of seniors who I could speak to, and then I just landed into the HR profession. So for me, management, it's my philosophy is every career path is unique. There is
mm,
no set direction for any career path, but every career path's unique characteristics are for that individual. So, if people are watching and say that will this work for me, probably will not. You have to find your own way. But I chanced into the HR profession, but I'm so happy with that choice.
right. Awesome. I love your storytelling skills. I've followed a couple of your blogs and everything, and it's really interesting how you weave stories into everything. And I'm a strong believer that uh, facts tell, but stories sell, right? So the kind of impact that stories have in any context, in anything that you're trying to communicate, is far deeper, right? So tell me, in the context of HR, in the context of leadership, in the context of employee engagement, what role does storytelling have?
Shrikant, I think storytelling is probably one of the most important, not just HR competencies, but leadership competencies in the world right now.
Mm,
If you see a lot of successful leaders around us today, a lot of them are really good at telling stories and telling stories about organizations, telling stories about self. Who doesn't like stories? We've all grown up reading different forms of. I grew up reading Tinkle and Chandamama, and I'm probably from a bygone era, and all the Marvel comics and all that. And the kids today are just glued to stories. My nephew, for example,
yeah.
he's now gone a step further. He's writing stories by himself. So I think it's a medium that people internalize, and there is a direct neuro-linguistic programming angle to that. When you stories tend to evoke emotions among people, and it tends to affect that part of your brain which kind of elevate those emotions to become memories for you. So,
Mm,
in a lot of the good organizations, leaders are actually trained in storytelling. Like I have done multiple workshops on storytelling. It's a competency that I believe managers and human resource professionals and leaders must have. I would say even parents need to have good storytelling competencies because they drive points. It's easier to tell a bad news story, for example, through a story, or
mm,
a good news through a story. And it's something which people can relate to. And for me, the other thing which storytelling does is it really opens conversations for people
mm,
because you're telling it in a fashion which is very relatable for
mm,
people, right? So if you see a lot of the orators that we have seen in the world today, they're all fantastic storytellers, and they tell it in a
true.
fashion that you and I can understand. So when you look at stories, not just telling the story is important, but the context for storytelling is also extremely important. Knowing your audience in terms of what story you're going to say, that also needs to sell. So I'm fascinated by storytelling. It's an area that I read a lot. Tips. I have some of my friends who are great storytellers. I always say this that salespeople and recruiters are some of the best storytellers because they have the best stories that you listen to, and I
Mm,
I love listening to them.
right. Any specific, most interesting, most shocking story that comes to your mind that you came across in any context, hopefully in the context of recruitment or retention or employee engagement or somewhere.
Actually, I have a very interesting story. When my father retired from the bank, he was working as a consultant in an IT company, and he called me one evening and he said, "Hey, can I speak to you for a couple of minutes because I have an observation I have to share." And then he said, "I said, yeah, sure. I mean, let's talk." And then he described for the next 3 minutes on what he saw during conference calls in in IT companies. He walked into a room where somebody was doing something on the computer, somebody was on the phone, the conference call is going on, and there are multiple people speaking. Nobody is kind of taking notes, and he's like, I'm not even sure if people are listening, and if people are not listening, they say, can you please repeat that question again? And from coming from a banking industry where he's been so used to discipline and note taking and making memos and things like that. It actually got me present to some of the bad habits we are actually probably developed during conference call and meetings. And I think sometimes I feel the pandemic has probably encouraged some of those bad behaviors also, because we've just been constantly talking on the phone. When I know people on the phone who openly told me saying that I'm just on calls, but I'm probably playing solitaire or something like that, apart from on the conference call. So it just got me present to the fact that you need to have a very discipline around remote working. It's not just sitting at home and then switching on your laptop and then connecting to a conference call. I think it's a lot of preparation, a lot of discipline. You have meetings. For example, in my current organization, we tell people to limit meetings to 25 minutes and not more than that, as much as possible, and things like that. So that's a story I constantly keep going back to, because it just keeps you leveled in terms of what you should be looking for during meetings, remote meetings.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a nice one. So since we spoke about what meetings are likely to look like and what work from home is going to look like, what according to you is work going to look like in a post-pandemic world? Let's hope 2022 is what we refer to as the post-pandemic year or the post-pandemic world or something. And what is work going to look like in the coming years according to you?
Yeah, I mean, I echo your words, right? I sincerely hope that 2022 can be what we can officially say the worst is behind us, and we can start probably, looking to put a pitch in the folks and say, like, say, okay, we're done, in the post-pandemic world. And I think the interesting thing for me as I read all the reports, like from Gartner or other places, I think the unit of work has fundamentally changed,
Mm,
right? For example, when we think about work in a pre-pandemic world, we used to think about work being done at the office
mm,
or being done in a defined setting, in a which are controllable boundaries, right?
right.
um, in the last 2 years of the pandemic, I think we've discovered that we can do work from anywhere. It doesn't have to be in what we look at as a physical description of the world. It can
Right.
be in an online setting. It can be, I've had a team member who was working from, Himachal Pradesh, when
Mm,
and he used to send photographs of him sitting next to a river and taking a call and actually working collaboration, but doing it very effectively, very productively. So
mm,
I think the fundamental shift is, I think the unit of work has changed.
mm,
The second thing is that I think what we will start looking, I think experiencing, is that in what we are calling as a hybrid workforce, where people are going
mm,
to be some in the office, somewhat outside of the office. We're going to
mm,
find that what happens, and that's what I
mm,
think has been the while COVID has been terrible at so many levels. I think if you look at the other side and see what we have learned about ourselves in COVID, is that we can still find ways to get work done and get work done pretty well. I think last year there was a report which I saw that I think about 85% of CEOs had actually reported that productivity levels are increased,
mm,
even despite COVID. But I think the significant challenge will be in terms of how to do innovation and how to
mm,
create new things in an online scenario. So for me, that's the exciting part,
mm.
with regards to how we're going to get to redefine workspaces. And I think, being in HR, I'm so excited because you don't get to do this kind of groundbreaking work every day in your career, right? It's a great opportunity for you to sit
Yeah.
back, think, create legacy systems, processes. So it's really exciting time.
Awesome. So tell me three things that's your forecast or that's your estimate that is going to be significantly different in an office environment in 22 versus what it used to be in 2019.
Oh, great. The first one I think I referred to, right? I don't think we're going to have a scenario where people are going to come 5 days to the office. I think
Mm,
most of the population is going to prefer a combination of work life. I don't like to use the word work life balance.
mhm,
I try to use the word work life effectiveness.
mm,
Where we are interviewing both aspects of work and life, and then we're trying to find what works best for every single person. So I think the era of 9 to 5 workplace 5 days a week, I think, has gone. Number one. I think the second one, which I have increasingly been talking about, has been what I call as a democratization of engagement and employee experiences in companies.
Mhm.
So if you look at traditional way of engaging with people, is that companies will launch programs or policies that employees will like, not like, and things like that. We are now realizing that we're coming to a workforce where people are increasingly wanting to have a say in terms of how they want to be engaged, how
Mm.
they want to be interacted with, what kind of communication channels they want to be communicated to. Some want Slack, some want Teams, some want emails, some want face-to-face communication. So it's a real challenge to find that omni-channel capability which can cut across all channels. And I think the third one is adding to the complexity of the democratization of engagement in a customized environment. Like, for
Mm.
example, if the way I engage with Shrikant is going to be very different to the way I engage with Kaushik, because Shrikant and Kaushik are in a very different life stages potentially, right?
Right.
Shrikant may have a small kid with two parents, and Kaushik may be having no kids and he's not married, and he's a bachelor, and he's got different requirements from a medical insurance perspective. He wants to have more
Mm.
sabbaticals. He wants to go see the world. So I think those three, I think, are going to be very important. Especially the last two. I think the first one, I think we'll figure out in
Right.
terms of hybrid, and probably the innovation conundrum is the one which I'm more concerned about.
Mm.
But the democratization of engagement, where people really want to have a say, like a lot of organizations are now saying, we want to release this policy, and then they will release a poll. Hey, what do you guys
Mm.
think about this policy? People want to have more of a say in terms of how they want to be engaged, and I think those
Mm.
workplaces, when they figure out this particular puzzle, we start to see a lot, productivity thrive, collaboration thrive
Mm.
in the longer run. So yeah, and these are things which I see as probably the biggest trends going forward.
Right. Awesome. Love all those three bits. I'm looking forward to 2022 being very, very different. I want to dive a little bit deeper into one of the points that you said. But before that, I want to once again remind the audience now is a great time. If you have any questions that you'd like me to point at Kaushik, please, we are right now live on Facebook, LinkedIn, and on YouTube. Wherever you are, just type it on the chat box and I will point it out to Kaushik, and let's see what comes out. So, Kaushik, while we wait for some questions to come in, let's dive a little deeper into what you spoke about democratization of employee engagement, right? Now, democracy is a double-edged sword, right? It's as romantic and as awesome it is. It's impossible to get a agreement onto something, right? So, how do you balance that? In you always have the opposition. We always see their primary duty is to oppose, right? So how do you manage something like that in a work environment?
Yeah, I think democracy, in a lot of times, I think it tends to get misunderstood with two concepts.
Mm.
One is equality and one is equity,
Mm.
right? People tend to mix one with the other when it comes to equality and equity. Like, as an example, if there are two people who are doing the same job, there is a view that they should be paid exactly the same salary.
Mm.
But the point is that no two human beings are the same, right? There are
Mm.
always be extraneous factors to what constitutes that particular human being. I
Mm.
think democracy, democratic practices tend to sometimes get into trouble because they try to be equal
Mm.
as compared to following an equity related program. Like, for example, do you get what you deserve is what I tend to think of in an equity scenario. I don't know if you may remember this. There was this beautiful cartoon which came about three people who are trying to peep over a wall,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and um, the difference between equity and equality was, in equality, all of them were provided the same height of the stool. So all of them were able to peep over the wall, but still the height difference was there. Whereas in equity, each one of them got the size of the stool that they needed for them to peep over the wall. I think that's a great way to kind of understand equity and equality. So, in an equality context, I completely agree with you. It's very difficult to get agreement from everybody.
Yeah.
But in an equity context, I think you can get agreement from people because what you are trying to follow is one of being fair, of one of being transparency, and it's a concept that people will by and large buy in.
Right. Awesome. So, Kaushik, I was going through your profile and I see you have experience or expertise in mergers and acquisition, right? Now, I've always had this question: what happens when two companies come together? They probably have different work culture, different vision, different values, and things like that, right? So, I keep hearing saying, hey, a large organization, let's not name companies, but let's say a company which has had thousands of employees, has been in business for 25 years or so, acquires a startup which is about 50 employees or so. What happens to in that organization and in that kind of a scenario, and how does the culture blend really happen? Can you give some insights into that?
Yeah, it's a great question, Shrikant. I think I'm probably uniquely qualified to talk about that question right now because Neustar has just been acquired by TransUnion, and we're
Right.
going through an acquisition process.
Hmm.
And in Symphony, I was part of multiple mergers and acquisitions process. So I've seen both ends of the spectrum where I've been part of the acquisition and I've been part of the acquiring companies as well. And for me, it always starts that the question of why we are doing this transaction.
Hmm.
What is the reason for these two companies to come together, and why have we executed on this particular strategy?
Hmm.
So, as an example, right, we in one of my previous engagements, we acquired a 10-member company, a company
Hmm.
which gave us a very specific set of competencies in a particular product. And this company of 10 people had a very laissez-faire style, very loose, would come to office with shorts, would have beer on Fridays, which is very different to the way that we used to function as a company. And it wasn't easy to kind of get to that common point in terms of how. But what really worked for us is the fact that we explained the why to people in terms of why did we kind of do this acquisition, and why do we need you guys, and what
Hmm.
critical roles each of you are going to play in the new entity. And
Hmm.
I wish I had a magic wand that says, do this, it will happen, right? I mean, I've had my fair success, share of failures as I have had successes in this area. But I think that leadership alignment with regards
Hmm.
to creating that common culture is probably
Hmm.
the most important thing. And then it then goes down to the next levels in terms of setting the right goals, and then having the right rewards and recognition practices, having the right set of more motivational goals for people. Usually in an acquisition you go through something called a harmonization period. In
Hmm.
the harmonization period you also allow for cultures to blend. And also, I think very importantly is that even if it's a big company acquiring small companies, the big companies need to be open-minded enough to say, okay, there may be something good in the small companies which we can take and we
Hmm.
can adopt and we can practice across the organizations of the larger organization. So
Right.
goes into a lot of into those areas. So I know it's a long-winded answer, but I can probably talk the next half an hour about this topic because
Yeah.
it's such a nice topic.
Right, right. I'm sure. I'm really curious, and I'm absolutely certain that it'll call for an entire episode dedicated to that. So probably another time we'll get into that. Uh,
Sure.
I also saw that you're a certified mental health professional, right? And thankfully, in the last few years, we've been speaking openly about mental health issues. Can you shed some light into that? What do you see that's been happening, and what should, as an HR professional, what should you keep in mind with respect to mental health, especially in the context of remote working or hybrid working?
Yeah, Shikan, I think that's probably the area that has impacted me the most during pandemic.
Mm.
People who know me prior to the pandemic know that I have spoken about this particular aspect as a ticking time bomb in the IT industry for a long time.
Hmm.
Because we are in this rat race and we have this constant innate wanting to be successful in whatever we do at the cost of sacrificing our own self. While that's great, but I think everything comes with a cost. And
Mm,
if you see my LinkedIn, the last few posts have all been about mental health and what my experience with mental health has been. And I'm going to answer your question slightly differently, in the sense, what HR professionals need to be mindful about. For me, you know, I've been filled with an enormous sense of gratitude for all HR professionals in all the companies for the work they have done for protecting our people across the industry. Look at the work that has gone through, right? You're not only caring for yourself, but you're caring for the lives of not just your employees, but their families, their loved ones. We've had requests to kind of provide, an oxygen concentrator to an uncle's friends, in some remote part of the world, and we've tried to kind of scramble and provide those services to people. We've had to make sure that we had people with money for hospitalization, increase insurance coverages. So
mm,
just the care that we have actually, exhibited for our employees in general, I'm filled with pride, but I'm also filled with immense sense of gratitude. But I
mm,
also want my HR colleagues across the industry to actually take care of themselves as well, right? Because we spend so much time in on the mental health of other people. Sometimes I think we forget about ourselves. And when I'm going to do something which is I've not done for many times in my career, is I'm actually going to take like 2 weeks off at the end of the year, and I'm actually going to completely disconnect because I have realized that I need that break. And all of us, I dare say, I think would need that break. So I think from your own HR professionals who are watching this particular video, really important to care for yourself, your own
right.
mental health, your own physical health, because you have done so much of it this whole year. And I think it's about time that we deserve a break and we come back refreshed, because if we are not refreshed, then we can't provide that energy to the rest of the organization. So that's what I was very present to during the pandemic.
Right. I think very well said, and I think it's a very, very important point. You kind of took a different direction, but I think it's something which we oversee. I mean, overlook a lot of times, where whenever we speak about mental health, we are speaking about the 99% of the employees in the organization, their family, but we never speak about the mental health of the HR itself, right? So that's a great point that you brought out. Since we are on that note, you've been in HR for almost 18, 17, 18, 19 years. Give me some insights into how you've seen HR change and transform. How was it when you started your career, and how is it right now? And what role is an HR professional going to play in the coming, say, 5 or 10 years? And accordingly, for somebody who is just starting off their career as an HR, as an HR professional, what's your tips or what's your advice to them?
Yeah, I have been immensely grateful for the fact that I've had some incredible mentors throughout my HR career.
Mm,
And one of the very early advice I got as a part of my career when I started was to break my career into blocks of 10. And I'm talking about like 20 years back. So spend the first 10 years just doing everything and anything. Don't worry about the bigger picture. Oh, I'm not meant to do this and things like that. I have done Xerox copying of like thousands and thousands of copies. I've arranged for tea, coffee for candidates who've been waiting for interviews, because everything
mm,
adds up to your experience. Spend the next 10 kind of honing your skills. Choose one or two or three areas that you think you like. Choose one or two or three areas which you think you can make your careers become an expert in. And the last 10, start looking at how you can kind of become a master in those areas
mm,
specifically. So I got those three, and probably I think now the horizon is probably shifted. I don't think it's 10 years anymore. Like, it's probably going to be blocks of 5, I think, where
right.
people are going to be wanting to do something different, and then we'll attain mastery in something, and then we'll go back to doing something again, we'll again mastery
Yes.
again. So they'll probably repeat the same cycle twice in their career for
Right.
people. And if you see how the human resources function has evolved over the last 2 decades, at least I've been functioning, is that when I started working, HR was looked at trying to get a seat at the table. I don't think HR needs to. I would say at least even 5 years back, I don't think HR needs to kind of worry about that. And then, greatest example we have is to see what Lina Nair now has been able to do. Get to the CEO of Chanel, and I think that's where we could do. That's where we can aspire to do. And I think the next 10, 15 years is really going to be about able to step up that consultative game and provide that value added services for people. I think we are going to have to be prepared to drop some of these, the core things like performance management or compensation reviews and things like that. A lot of them is going to get automated. A lot of them is going to become what I call as business functions. They're not going to be really HR functions. We now, I think, need to start thinking about the workforce in completely in a different fashion, bringing in concepts around emotional intelligence, empathy, really being stepping up to the leadership plate, and I'm really looking forward to that. That's what I think. What I have presently been present to is that so many people are in the HR fraternity are now stepping up to those low roles. And I think I only want to see more and more Lina Nayas come up for us, because I think we are best suited right now to run organizations, because the core of it is people, and we understand people very well, and we understand customers well. So I think that's a good mix to look at.
Right, absolutely. I was about to ask you some questions about Lina Nair. For those in the audience who are not very sure what that is, I think Lina Nair was the CHRO or VP HR, Director HR, or something like that at Unilever, and has gone on to become the CEO at Chanel, which is European luxury brand. Is that correct? Did I get that
Yes,
correct,
you got
Kaushik?
it right. You the CHRO. That's correct.
Yeah, so I think it's very very unique example where somebody who is heading an HR function goes on to become the CEO of an organization, right? So I wanted to kind of touch that point, and I meant to ask you this: you come from a commerce or a chartered accountancy background and have gone on to build your career on HR, and like you rightly mentioned, I came across quite a few professionals who are switching halfway through their career. They're switching from IT, they're switching directly to finance, and from finance they're again switching to something else. So what value is it if somebody brings these different kinds of skills? Do you see that as lack of focus, or do you see that as bringing more value to the leadership table?
Yeah, you know what? I would be amiss if I didn't touch on a particular subject when you asked me about the future of HR, which is directly related to your current question, right? I think we the concepts around diversity, equity, and inclusion right now,
Hmm.
and I think these concepts are right now are being introduced into our vocabulary new right now. In the future, I think they will become one with our vocabulary. We don't have to think about it as a separate topic. It will
Hmm.
start becoming the mindsets, and I think that is the bedrock of the answer to your question, in terms of valuing everybody's experience. And I'll give an example of that is Google, for example, and I think it was Ernst and Young. They removed the educational qualification as a criteria for people to apply to their respective jobs,
Okay.
because I think they have done a very significant amount of analysis to understand, saying that there's not really a strong correlation between an educational qualification and the actual performance of person on the job. So I think we will go to, we have already moving towards a borderless world, but I think we will also go to an increasing towards an experience-less world, where your prior experience only brings you certain amount of credibility in the domain, but really is about how you can apply those prior experience across the various borders, and especially in a leadership context. I think that's even more important. So, like there are people who are making transitions out of HR, but there are a lot of people making transitions into HR also. People who come from, I know a lot of people who come from a sales background who run the talent acquisition functions, for example. I know lawyers who are now coming into to run the HR function as a whole, for example. So that variety has already started. We have started recognizing it. We have started celebrating it. And now I think the next step is we now need to start encouraging it as normal, so that people feel emboldened and people feel that, yes, this makes a lot of sense to me.
Right. Awesome. Awesome. That's superbly said. I want to touch upon something that I saw in one of your profile where it says that you played significant roles in rewards, setting up rewards or total rewards or something like that. Can you tell a little bit about that? What role does rewards have to play in employee engagement?
Oh, I think rewards are a huge part of employee engagement. Be it tangible, non-tangible rewards. Because at the end of the day, you want rewards drive behaviors more than anything else.
Mm, mm,
And it starts. We have a huge culture of rewards in across the globe, and it starts from the time saying, "Hey, if you go to the shop, I'll give you a five-star chocolate." It comes from it starts from right from our upbringing in terms of how we have been used to getting a reward.
right.
If you get first rank in school, I will buy you a bicycle or a motorcycle or something like that. So it's something which we have grown up with. It's very innate. It's very human behavior. And at the end of the day, all of us
Yeah.
want to have something to show for it, even if it's a certificate, or even if it's acknowledging somebody. Like for example, in my organization, when people come and teach or train people, we give them plants, and
Mm,
we it's notional because we tell them saying that it's something for which you can nurture and grow and see in front of you, as part of your growth in this whole organization, and this is what you have contributed to. So rewards for me have a monetary context, but for me they have a far more of an emotional context.
mm,
It could be as simple as a certificate. I used to have what I call as a five-star manager, because what he used to do is, if somebody had a really done a great job, he used to take a greeting card and he used to take 5 stars, and he used to write a very inspirational message. He used to be a calligraphy writer, and then he used to write the message. And I know how people really valued that particular aspect of that individual. So it's not about, I think, those big bang. Here is a 1 lakh rupees. I think the
yeah.
daily ones make the real big difference. It's about your boss coming and telling you, saying, "Listen, you did a fantastic job. I'm so happy that you work for my organization." It's about sending that person that 1,000 rupees Amazon gift voucher. Not 1,000 rupees in today's context is not much money, but the fact that
Mm,
my company sends me something, I am valued. Those emotional contexts really make a difference. It could even be as simple as just calling out somebody's name in a town hall meeting and saying that, "Hey, Srikant, great job. You've done an outstanding job of building this particular thing, and I'm very happy that you are part of this team and this organization." So everything about reward, I think, has definitely has a physical monetary element. But for me, my experience of running total rewards has been that it needs to have far more of an emotional context, far much an emotional connect to people, and
right.
that's what I have tried to focus on as part of my rewards journey.
Right, right. Absolutely. I completely agree with you on that. Since we do corporate gifts, I see that when we make gift packs and we send, and it's the pack is worth thousands of rupees, invariably we've seen that it's the greeting card that gets a shout out, right? They say, I love the card, I love the message on it, and I'm going to pin it in an important place and I'm going to look at it every single day. Where the value of the greeting, we probably gave that greeting card complimentary as a part of the gift pack, right? So it's the intent, it's not the value. But I think the value of the product or the reward that is given um, increases the memory or the duration of that memory of whatever that was achieved. Let's say completion of 5 years in business or something like that. So that's my philosophy. And we've seen that the impact of that greeting card, that emotional connected builds, is 10x more if a personal message is written out instead of a printed message, wherever possible. Of course, if you're sending to thousands of people, it may not be possible. But if it's a smaller team, writing out a personalized note, I think is really, really amazing.
Yeah, and I think in the pandemic context, that's become even more important, because
Yeah,
we're not physically there in the offices, and I've
correct.
seen many companies kind of really do a fantastic job in that area, right? It's not about, for example, when we sent out care packages for people to
Mm,
deal with, we got them oximeters and BP machines and etc. A lot of people
mm,
actually told us, you know what, we love the gesture. We have some of these at home already, but the
mm.
fact that you care to send us
Yes.
this, that conveys a fact of care for organizations. And I think many companies have done a phenomenally great job of actually connecting that aspect with employees.
Right. Absolutely. Couldn't agree with you more, Kaushik. So we're almost at the end of the session. I have one last question before we can wind this up. I want to ask you. You worked in HR in the Indian context as well as in the global context, right? So from an HR professional point of view, how is it different? What are the differences? What are the different kind of nuances? What are the different kind of challenges in these two different settings?
Yeah, again, it's a great question. It's something which I've had the unique opportunity of experiencing both cultures, of working in a global setting, working in a local setting as well. I think there are lots of different things, right? Because if you look at the composition of workforces across the various regions are very different. Like India has a far younger
Yeah.
demographic population as compared to say some of the other countries across. So hence the needs and the behavior characteristics are different. Like for example, we spoke about the purpose and the why of the organizations. I think that conversation is I think far more prevalent in some of the say the European and the Scandinavian countries as compared to say in some of the Asian countries. In some of the Asian countries, we still are, it's still a lot about things like cash compensation or rewards and recognition because the younger workforce, that's what the need of the hours for people. In some of the workforces, it's really about medical insurance and benefits, and it's really about how are we having a total family philosophy to the whole, the whole benefits package. I think culturally, but regardless of all these semantics, right? What I've been very present to is the fact that all of us are human beings at the end of the day. All of us want to be engaged. All of us want to be rewarded. All of us want to be inspired. I like to use the word inspired more than motivated because I think motivation is more a self-induced quality as compared to inspired. I can inspire someone, but I cannot get someone to do something, right? So that's why I look at it. So for people across cultures, I think it's still those tenets are still the same. People want to be they want to know why they work in organizations. They still want to be felt, cared for in some way, shape, or form. And for me, that was probably the biggest realization of working in across global organizations is that we may be different with regards to caste, creed, color, etc., etc. But we're still humans at the end of the day, and we still want to be engaged. We want to be touched. We want to be inspired. We want to be moved. And I think that was a big learning for me personally.
Awesome. Fantastic. Loved it, Kaushik. I really had a great time. I'm absolutely sure that it was great value for the audience who were here with us. Thank you so much for your time, Kaushik. It was a really, really insightful conversation. Really appreciate you taking the time off in the probably last few days before you take off on your vacation. I hope you had a good time, Kaushik.
Yeah, thank you, Shrikant. I really appreciate the time, and I've been very humbled by the fact that I've been given the opportunity to share my perspectives. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a fantastic weekend and Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year in advance to you, Kaushik. And thank you everyone from the audience for joining. Have a great day. Bye bye.
Thank you. Happy holidays.